The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that's happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for getting involved every single week. Our email address is feedback@doubletap.online. On Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. I am Marc Aflalo, joined every week by Stephen Scott. Stephen, I had a brilliant idea as I'm just talking about people getting involved in the show, and that is doing a show all about your questions at home, because we get lots of emails, we get voicemails because of the live show now on AMI Audio. So why not do a show dedicated to our audience, to our viewers, and answer their questions? I mean, they have so many really, really good questions that spark ideas for new shows. So why not do a show all about them?
Yeah, and sometimes it's the simple questions that lead us to the better answers for people, right? Because, we want to not just hear about, well, what's better, the iPhone 12 or the iPhone whatever. We want to hear, your specific questions around tech you're using, issues you might be having, queries that you might have that when we answer it, we can help everyone else.
But this week, Stephen, we're kind of blasting back to the past in order to talk about something new. And that is the Apple Watch Series 6. More importantly, though, I think really it's about the Apple Watch in general.
I love the Apple Watch. And it's weird because people always ask me, why do you have the Apple Watch? And my answer is always the same. I actually have no idea. I don't really know what I use it for. I can't really pin it down to one or a specific thing that makes it amazing. I suppose the whole reason as a blind guy that I love the Apple Watch so much is because it is the only really, truly, fully accessible watch out there. Now, that's not to disregard other smartwatches from, say, Samsung or Huawei or any basically Wear OS from Google powered smartwatch. They do have accessibility in them, but it's just not there. It's just not got it. It's one thing having accessibility, but there's a difference between accessibility and usability. And it has to be usable. If I want to know what time it is, I don't want to have to wait an hour to figure out where the bit on the screen is that I'm going to tap to hear back that audible feedback that tells me the time. Or if I'm swiping, it's going to take me a while to hear the responses when I swipe around the screen. I want that feedback instantly. I get that from the Apple Watch. So I guess if there's one thing, it will be the accessibility. In terms of use case though, in terms of reasons for having one, well, there are many, because it all depends on the apps you have on the watch. And when I got my very first one, which was of course Series 1, because I dived right in, right? I mean, I wanted to know how this would work. I'm still rocking the Series 5. That's what I've got on my wrist right now. I've got the cellular version, which I love, and I can talk about that later as to why. But honestly, this is probably the greatest smartwatch there is out there. Not just for blind people, for everyone.
Now, when they first announced the Apple Watch, the first generation, what were your expectations going into that first watch before you had an opportunity to play with it? What did you expect that experience to be like?
It's an interesting question. I actually had no idea. That was the thing about it. Part of me felt that it was going to allow me to text, to take calls. That was what it was kind of sold as, the ability to communicate. So it would be more about communication, not really about, fitness or what it's become around health. That wasn't really my expectation. My expectation was to be able to text and to communicate with people. And actually, that was where I was let down at the start, because texting on a watch is hopeless. But in saying that, they have brought in new features, like, for example, being able to dictate messages. You can send audio messages instead. So, that is wonderful. There are some things, though, I'll be honest, that annoy me about it and have continued to annoy me. I use WhatsApp all the time. And, a lot of blind people love WhatsApp, particularly the audio message function. And for some reason, WhatsApp just doesn't really work properly on the iPhone, on the Apple Watch, I should say. You can't listen to messages and you can't send audio messages. And I don't understand why. We're at Series 6 and it's still the case. So I don't know what that's about. But that, granted, is an app problem. It's not a watch problem. The watch is capable of it. It just, the app needs to develop. But I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet.
I've gotten, the Series 6 here on my wrist, and what really blows my mind about the Apple Watch in general is the constant evolution from generation to generation. There's always something, whether it be software or hardware-wise, that is a compelling reason for me to get the new version. In this Apple Watch Series 6, a lot of the family features, the ability to take my old watch, give it to my children or my son, and be able to keep in contact with him without it being a distraction for him at school was a big selling point for me. And that's something that really made me jump on the Series 6 so that I can give him the Series 5. But let's save some of that criticism and some of that conversation for after the break. We've also got a great guest lined up for this week's show to talk all about the Apple Watch. His name is Rene Ritchie. He's an Apple insider. He's an analyst and a YouTuber. He's joining us this week on the show. I am Marc Aflalo. He is Stephen Scott. We're going to take a quick break and let's dive into some of those features of the Apple Watch in general, but also talk about some of the new features in Series 6 and new watchOS 7.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
We are back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here. Email address feedback@doubletap.online. On Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. I am Marc Aflalo with Stephen Scott, as we are every single week. That's something I'm pretty sure you can guarantee for as long as they will let us do this. Right, Stephen?
Yeah. As long as we're not found out, yeah, we'll be fine.
During the break, I actually took an electrocardiogram just because, that's what I do. I like to use my watch, and it has a feature called an ECG. So I like to, hold my finger on the actual, small dial on the right, and I wait 28 seconds, and I hope that it does not tell me to run to the hospital afterwards, because that's something that I really don't want to do. That's one of those features that I know when it was announced, I'm like, who's ever going to use that? But it's amazing when you've got hypochondriacs around you, who are constantly worried about things like their health and their heart and their breathing and anything else that, could possibly ail them. A little thing like ECG on your wrist could actually calm those thoughts around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think people who tended to, my dad used to do this. I remember the day he bought a medical dictionary and he brought it into the house. And it was from that day forward that he became a hypochondriac. Whatever was in that medical dictionary, he had. And I think with these devices, a little bit of that comes through as well. But in saying that, they do save lives as well. People who don't realize they have problems suddenly realize that they do because the watch tells them. One thing that fascinates me, and it's been in the Apple Watch now for a couple of years, is this breathe feature, where when you're wearing the watch, if you're maybe just getting a little bit too excited, or maybe your heart rate is raising a bit too high, the watch will actually come up and say breathe. And at first I got a bit annoyed by that. I'm thinking, how dare you tell me to breathe? And then suddenly I'm getting more angry as a result of it telling me to calm down. But actually it does help, and what I've realized is they seem to have refined that feature over the years so that it is, I clearly do feel a bit more agitated at that moment when it tells me to breathe. And I just stop now and go, right, hang on, I need to start breathing for a minute. So it is actually aiding me through my day. And the health features, although that wasn't something I ever thought the Apple Watch would benefit me with, I'm now realizing it does. I have heart problems, I have issues with my heart, and for the past few years my Apple Watch has been monitoring that, because you're able to set, for example, high heart rate and low heart rate, which is really important as well. That's the issue I have. It's not that my heart goes too fast, it's that my heart goes too slow. Even my heart, Mark, is lazy. It doesn't go fast. So, for that reason...
that breathe feature, it's funny that you say that it annoyed you when it first came out. I can only imagine what your reaction was like when the hand washing feature came out in the latest generation.
No, I can't be bothered.
Is that something you snoozed immediately? You turned off? Let's get rid of this thing.
I just stopped washing my hands. I'm only kidding. Don't write in. Of course I wash my hands sometimes. Or just take my watch off. That's the solution to that. But other health... I don't have the Series 6, but other health benefits of the Series 6... You've got the 6 there. is this new blood oxygen level monitor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat feature of the Apple Watch, and it's got its own app now, and it's just literally just blood oxygen, and I'll give you guys an overhead kind of view of what's going on here. It works very similar to the ECG, whereas you got to keep it really tight on your wrist because it's using lights to measure, the bounce back in terms of the actual blood oxygen. I'm going to hit start here. It doesn't always work. It takes about 15 seconds to actually count down and take the measurements. You're supposed to keep perfectly still, so I'm trying to keep my left arm perfectly still while the watch is on right now. And the response, I've gotten some readings that were, 100%, 98%. I don't know about you, Stephen, but I find that even though there are so many apps available for the Apple Watch, I tend to only use it with the native apps that were built for it by Apple.
Yeah.
There's very few other apps that I use. Occasionally when I'm out biking, I'll use my garage door opener because I can. But again, that's built into the Home app because I've got a HomeKit-enabled garage door. So other than that and texting and things like WhatsApp, I really don't take advantage of many other apps for it because I find that they're all kind of a bit wonky in their own little way.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I have one over here in the UK that I use for train times, and it works, once every 5 times I use it. And that's something that I think that app developers really have to sort out. And I think they have to sort it out on Apple's behalf because Apple clearly want to sell these units. But if you get the experience of, well, that app didn't work very well and this isn't very good, that's not a good experience. That's not fun at all. There's one feature that is built into the Apple Watch, which I thought would be pretty cool. It came into watchOS 6, I think, and it's the walkie-talkie feature. Now, do you use the walkie-talkie feature?
I don't. Honestly, I wish more people had it enabled, and I wish it worked better because I really enjoyed it when it first came out.
Yeah.
My son and I use it all the time throughout the house, which is really fun. But I find that either other people don't turn it on, or it's just not reliably on all the time because I've tried to communicate with you and it says you're unavailable.
Yeah.
I've tried to communicate with Mitchell Whitfield, who's been on the show, unavailable. So I don't know if it's a reliability thing with walkie-talkie or if it's just people just not turning it on.
No, it's just me not turning it on. That's as simple as that. Because do you know what? We do a lot of studio work, obviously, and what I realised very quickly was right in the middle of on air, someone would just start speaking to me, and I'm thinking, where's that coming from? And then I'd realise that my watch was talking to me. It's like, right, turn that off, never again. But interestingly, you mentioned your son. One of the great things about watchOS 7, which is available across, Series 5, Series 3 as well, Watch, and Series 6, is the family setup feature. And this is pretty cool. So you can buy an Apple Watch, and you are able to set this up for your son. So your son could have his own Apple Watch without an iPhone. And I think there's not just sons and daughters are going to benefit from this, but family members who want to keep in contact with older people, and maybe that person doesn't want to have an iPhone or a smartphone. You can actually give them a watch, and you can set it up for them, and you're able to communicate with that loved one.
But the biggest takeaway from that is just the ability to pair more than one Apple Watch with a single device, with a single iPhone. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway of this feature entirely because, whether it be someone who has an Android phone or someone who doesn't have a phone yet. My kids have been using hand-me-down Apple Watches since they're 5 or 6 years old because they can. I have it, Why not let them play with it if they want to play with it? They want to be like daddy. They want to be like mommy. So you can give them a watch. But until now, I've had to use older phones that support the Apple Watch in order to set it up for them so they can kind of customize it, which has been honestly annoying because I'd rather sell those watches and make some money for it. But now the ability to pair multiple Apple Watches is definitely cool. And those school time features and those family features, absolutely a game changer for the way in which our kids can use the actual device.
Yeah, definitely. And I think these new features that are coming in, and that's the great thing. You buy an Apple Watch today, even if you buy the Series 3, or you buy the Series 5, or you decide to go for the 6, or indeed the new SE as well, which is another option. You're still getting something which will be usable in 3 years' time, and you'll still get all the system updates for another couple of years at least. 3 years minimum, I would say. You get the benefit of all the new features. And, oftentimes, like me now, when I've got my Apple Watch, I've got the Series 5, as I was saying, I'm looking at the OS, I'm looking at the operating system, I'm looking at what's coming up next, and I'm getting excited about that. The new features that are in the Series 6, for me to make the leap from the 5 to the 6 doesn't seem right at the moment. I don't need the blood oxygen monitoring feature. I totally get the benefit of it, but I don't need it in my life, so I don't need to go out and spend the money on it. And nobody else wants my Apple Watches, so there you go. So I don't have anyone to hand them off to. But I think that these new features do present something of an option. I just wish that Android would come up with a comparable smartwatch, and it hasn't yet. Maybe Google will one day, but they haven't yet. So for the moment, if you really want a good smartwatch, you really want an Apple Watch.
Still to come, we're going to be talking to Apple analyst Rene Ritchie. He's on the deck, standing by, waiting to join us. It is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Marc Aflalo. We take a quick break here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We are back on Double Tap TV. Again, thank you guys so much for being here every single week. Email address is feedback@doubletap.online. On Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. Stephen, when I think of Apple and I think about all the YouTubers and the analysts and everybody who I follow, there's one name that always pops up. He happens to be a neighbor to me. He lives in Montreal. And his name is Rene Ritchie. And Rene joins us this week on Double Tap TV. Rene, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Rene, on Double Tap TV. So here we have it. The new Apple Watches are out. We've got the Series 6. We've got the Watch SE. What are your thoughts?
I like them. I think a lot of people are going to look at them, at least in our community, and say they're iterative. But I think it's really important to remember that most people, the vast majority of people, still don't have an Apple Watch or a smartwatch at all. And of the people who do, most of them have older watches. It's sort of just in the tech community that we feel obsessed to buy them every year and then complain about how you shouldn't buy them every year. But I think for a lot of people, Apple is just continuing to knock over roadblocks. Like, I was thrilled to get always on display. And I think this year athletes will be thrilled to have VO2 Max and SPO and the always on altimeter and features like that.
I wanted to ask you about the Series 3 watch. Why do you think that's still there? Why didn't they just cancel that out and leave us with the SE and the Series 6?
I think they couldn't get the SE down to the price that they wanted. They want to have an entry-level Apple Watch at around $200, maybe even lower if they can eventually do that. Again, because so many people simply don't have an Apple Watch yet. It's still an early adopter. It's not a mainstream accepted device yet. And if they were just at closer to $300, higher 200s, closer to 300s, that would limit the market. Where at 200, I don't want to say it's an impulse buy, especially not in 2020. Which is just the worst year, but I think it makes it easier for people who are interested but don't want to spend a lot of money on it yet.
We see new features such as family setup, where now you can buy an Apple Watch for someone, which I think is obviously great for kids. It's great for older people, parents or family members who want to look after someone who's older or younger. Getting them the ability to have an Apple Watch. But the question is this just a ploy to get more Apple Watches onto people's wrists?
I think it's sort of an intermediary step. It took when the iPhone was first introduced, it was dependent on iTunes, like an iPod was. You had to have a Mac or PC to do most everything with it. And then slowly but surely, especially with iOS 5 and iCloud, it became fully independent. You could just buy an iPhone. And the Apple Watch hasn't gotten there yet. And it's so much more constrained just as an environment, both for its compute power and its interface mechanics, that it's taking longer for it to get independent. But by doing things like the onboard app store and now things like family setup, you don't have to buy an iPhone for everyone just to have an Apple Watch. You still have to have an iPhone, but you don't have to have one per person anymore. And I think that's just one more step towards a truly independent Apple Watch, which is what I'm really looking forward to.
I want to ask you about apps, Rene, because I have WhatsApp on my Apple Watch, and I was mentioning on the show that one of the things that irritates me is that I can't seem to be able to get things like audio messages from WhatsApp directly on my wrist. I've got to go back to my iPhone for that. So some of these apps are not fully developed on the watch. Do you think that's likely to change soon?
I hope so. I think Apple might have made a mistake with the first generation of Apple Watch apps because they were maybe a little sensitive to the criticism that they didn't have apps on the original iPhone. It took them a year to get the App Store out. And so they did this weird thing with extensibility where you'd have the app logic on the phone, but the app interface on the watch. And it was a very limited and not a very good experience. And we eventually saw native apps, but they were WatchKit apps. They weren't fully native apps. Only Apple's apps really had that capability, and year over year, and that's sort of to preserve battery life and functionality and a bunch of other legitimate reasons, but it stifled apps on the watch. People just couldn't do what they wanted to do, which is what they could do on the iPhone. And as those barriers fall down, as they're given more access to background tasks and more independence, I think it'll take a fully independent watch to get all the way there. Sort of the threat that you might only have WhatsApp on your watch, not have a phone anywhere near you. They'll have to make those services work. But until then, I think we're still going to see these incremental improvements.
But when do you think that's going to happen? I mean, we're at Series 6 here, so, when do you think we're going to get a watch that is truly independent?
No, I think it's going to take a few things. Like the iPhone was this beautiful convergence of what was then 3G networking was coming and miniaturization had happened, and the interface, they sort of cracked the multi-touch interface. And with the Apple Watch, it's just constrained in the input methods you have with it, but also the networking. It's still bound to your iPhone's phone number. It can do some things on its own, like make calls, but it relies on SMS relay. So it can't quite do everything you need it to do yet. And I don't know if, for example, 5G technologies will help, because one of the promises of 5G is to make connectivity ubiquitous for low-power devices, but it's going to be things like that. It's just time is going to solve this for us. It's just a question of how much time.
Now, while I've got you, Renee, I just want to ask you something that Mark actually brought up on a previous Double Tap TV, and that's around the availability of new iPhones. So we now know, of course, the iPhone 12 range is out. We've got the iPhone 12 mini, we've got the new iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 Max, and it's all very lovely. But, that's another year gone by. We've got the same phones. We'll have the same phones for another year. Whereas in the last 6 months alone, we've seen huge strides forward for Android phones. So we've seen new phones from LG, from Samsung, from others. What's your take on that? Do you think that it's maybe time that Apple maybe ramp up production of more phones more regularly?
So, I mean, with Apple, it's always like they have patents for almost everything. That's just how Silicon Valley companies run. And they have a similar acoustic technology to Qualcomm's under the screen, in-display, fingerprint reader. But I think especially at this price point and with the reliability of that technology, I think it was just safer for Apple to stick with the Touch ID technology, which they do very, very well. It keeps the materials costs down, and it's a very easy to understand process for people. The iPad Air itself is fascinating because Apple put the A14 in it, but there's no A14X in an iPad Pro yet. So you have this situation where for single process tasks and for machine learning, and things that hit the neural engine, the best iPad in the world right now is the iPad Air. But for heavy workloads, graphics intensive workloads, multi-core workloads, you still can't get anywhere near the sheer number of cores inside the iPad Pro, even though it's 2 generations older silicon. And that to me is sort of the managerial product nightmare that 2020 has visited on us as well.
Really appreciate you taking the time to come on, Renee.
It's so great to have Renee on the show, Stephen, and we really got to do that more often with him because he is a neighbor, so he is a fellow Canadian. To definitely follow him, it is just search up Renee Ritchie online, and you will find him there, right, Stephen?
Absolutely. He's a great guy, and really interesting to hear about his views. I hope to get him on soon to talk about what 2021 looks like for Apple.
Thank you guys for being here. As always, get in touch with us. It's feedback@doubletap.online, and on Twitter we are @DoubleTapCanada with that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, so we can compile it all and get it on an Ask Us Anything show coming up in the coming weeks. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Marc Aflalo. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll catch you again next week on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Marc Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing Will Attar. Production assistants Wendy Kaufman. Content review Zachary Aflalo. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Kara Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2020, Accessible Media, Inc.